These are a remarkable bird. These birds can regenerate themselves in 10 weeks. Nothing else can do that. Egg to egg is basically nearly 10 weeks. They're quite remarkable little birds.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. Fourth generation farmer Charlie Scott was always going to return to the land, but it's fair to say he didn't dream about quail farming as a boy. A combination of luck, nous, trial, error, and endless hard work led to him developing a successful business around his own breed of quail. As he comes towards the end of his farming journey, Charlie looks back on a business that's driven him hard and brought him enormous satisfaction.
My name is Charlie Scott. We've got a property called Redgate Farm. It's also the name of the business. It was just struggle street for my parents. So the 100-hour weeks weren't all that unusual, really. I'd been brought up as a workaholic, and to batten down and do the hours, that was a part of the course. But as a kid, it was great fun. We're running around catching snakes and doing all the sort of things that farm kids do, shooting rabbits and whatever else. You were out in the big wide open spaces, and I had three sisters, so being the only boy, I was pretty well managed to occupy myself most of the time being a nuisance. It was in my DNA, I think. Even when I travelled overseas extensively, which I'd done, backpacking through Europe, etc., I was always looking at agricultural prospects and seeing what everywhere else in the world was doing. So, it was... it was very much in my DNA.
When Charlie was a boy, his parents ran a dairy farm. How did he go from milk into the world of hatch, match and dispatch?
I knew absolutely nothing about poultry, and it was a matter of finding something my father knew nothing about, so that I could actually be given a free hand. It was a friend of mine who was involved in one of the large poultry companies who showed me how they were growing the large broiler chickens and what they were doing genetically with them. And so that's what we focused on. And we basically saw what was happening in the broiler industry. And it was a matter of replicating it and picking up everyone else's ideas and trying to downscale it to something that was small enough that we could manage here. Well, it was a matter of the hatch, match and dispatch, basically, as I spoke of earlier, was a matter of you had to learn about incubation technology and buying numerous incubators, trying them out, trying different things. We hatched every different sort of bird you could possibly imagine, including emus, mind you. And that was that was like something out of Jurassic Park when you were hatching quail in the same incubator. This big black foot would sort of poke out through the egg, and my God, what the hell is this thing? Everyone was on a learning curve. Every species is different. Everyone has a different incubation and period and humidity requirements, temperature requirements, and everything had to be modified. Sometimes it had to be a bit of a compromise. Then it was a matter of rearing the chicks, keeping them warm enough during the winter months, and insulating sheds so that in the summertime they didn't cook. Learning about ventilation and what to do and what not to do. Numerous mistakes. It was all trial and error because nobody could really direct you in most cases because what we were doing was quite innovative. As I said, we certainly spread ourselves too thin, but that was a part of the markets we were trying to supply. Restaurants were fickle. They would change their menus after 4 weeks and didn't want that product anymore, and so you had to quickly change feet and give them something they did want. So we were very much at the mercy of the markets in that regard. And delivery times were always an issue, as all my customers will tell you. Charlie Scott doing deliveries at 11 o'clock at night when they were just walking out the door. So it was a matter of prioritising. You either looked after your birds or looked after your customers, and if you don't look after your birds, you haven't got any customers. So, that was basically that was the rules. You had to have all the bird work to do, all the farm work to do before you got in the vehicle and then trotted off to restaurants, all of which were about 45 minutes away from the farm. And by the time you're coming home at night, yes, you had to pull over beside the road on numerous occasions to get some shut-eye.
Native quail were a frequent presence on the Scott family farm, but it wasn't till his sister returned from agricultural college with some quail eggs that the tiny birds came to mind as a potential enterprise.
I'm a bit of an animal freak in terms of wildlife, and I used to love seeing them down in the swamp as a kid. When I was slashing paddocks and things like that on the tractor, you'd see them all the time. And whilst I had a bit of a fascination for them, I wasn't really interested in locking them up in an aviary. It was more which species were they, and one's a bit of an unusual colour there. There's big ones, there's small ones, and so occasionally a little flock would come up towards the house or something like this, and you're fairly intrigued by them. Then it wasn't until I think one of my elder sisters had been to Hawkesbury Ag College for some sort of open day, and she came back with some quail eggs, and that's what got the ball rolling. I then approached Hawkesbury Ag College to find out which student was doing the work on quail. They all had different specialties that they were studying, and through him discovered what was going on in Sydney and found producers there that were processing up to 3,000 birds a week. This was just a mind-blowing concept that someone as close to Sydney was producing those sort of numbers and regularly selling them to through the restaurant trade. So that's what really kicked off the commercial side of it all. It was their reproductive rate which fascinated us. It was the fact that they could reproduce so quickly, and so comparing that to what chickens were doing. And we could see a fair bit of variation in just birds we could buy locally from either pet shops or from other commercial producers. And we lined them all up, and you could see there were variations in colour, there were variations in size, and they were unusual birds, and you can actually colour sex them. And you can actually pick up a bird without having to delve any deeper, molest the poor things. You can actually tell whether they're male or female. So this is a tremendous advantage. And no matter what colour they were, you could actually look at them and say that was a male or a female and be 99% correct. So there were so many things about them that was distinctly different to other birds, and they were quite compatible to intensive production. You can house large numbers together. The story about a lot of the European concreters that were growing them in their garage and processing them in their laundry and selling them to the local delicatessens, that was still going on when we started this business in the 1980s. It was very much a backyard operation, except for these few commercial guys that we knew about in Sydney. Day-old chicks, it's a 7-day-a-week operation. I think we set them on a Monday for. They'd have 14 days in the incubator, then they'd be, on a Wednesday, they'd be transferred through to the hatcher, which is a different machine that runs at a different humidity, different temperature, and they'd hatch on the Friday. And this was every week. So you had day-old chicks coming out of the incubators every Friday. So it was a routine and pretty easy to adjust to. Then you had the weekend to get them through their first couple of days. And after that, it was not necessarily plain sailing, but because of their small body size, they were far more vulnerable to ambient temperature changes. So storms. We didn't exactly have environmentally controlled sheds, so there were all issues of keeping them warm or keeping them cooler, depending on the seasonal variations.
As he got deeper into quail farming, Charlie realised they are a pretty special little bird, compatible with production at a cracking pace, egg to egg in 10 weeks, and therefore with plenty of commercial potential as a tasty and versatile meat bird.
Well, these are a remarkable bird. I'll speak about it from a production point of view first. These birds can regenerate themselves in 10 weeks. Nothing else can do that. They lay their eggs basically from 6 weeks on, 17 days to hatch them, and and then it's a matter of egg to egg is basically nearly 10 weeks. They're quite remarkable little birds. So genetically, they're fantastic. A broiler chicken lays its first eggs at 26 or 23 weeks, 23 to 26. It was like chickens on steroids in terms of your reproductive rate and therefore your genetic increase. And so we capitalised on that, and we sourced birds from all over Australia. We've included some native species in our production because we had them down here on the farm. It was a bit tricky catching them, but yes, it was a matter of creating a very large gene pool and selecting the birds on a weight gain performance, essentially. But weight gain has a negative correlation to fertility, so that's always a bit of a problem in any breeding program. But in terms of the meat to bone ratio is far superior to chickens. They're tiny bones in relation to their body size, so if you pack the meat onto them, it's all meat. And the Australians liking decent amounts of protein in their diet. We saw that as an opportunity to take these miserable little things that were coming, or basically the Europeans and the Asians were used to, and producing something that was more acceptable to the Australian palate. Part of the journey, it was on the menu most nights at Redgate. You always had damaged birds, and so you go very quick to bone them out. And yes, they were very much part of the staple diet at Redgate. And we had them pan fried, we had them smoked, we had them butterflied, barbecued, marinated in a variety of different ways, roasted, you name it, we did it. And they're delicious little birds. And the process, we didn't actually bleed the birds, so they tended to have a bit more colour and game to them than the most of the other commercial operations. So we developed different techniques that were all approved of, and our bird was a little bit different in not only the size but also the colour, flavour, texture.
Innovative businesses are never easy, and Charlie and his wife stretched themselves thin and got into serious debt. One fortuitous phone call helped turn things around. Yeah, no,
it was totally fortuitous. I got a phone call out of the blue, and this person said, "Look, I've just had Quail at Fire Door, which is a restaurant in Sydney. And we had your Jurassic Quail down there, which is what we labelled them. That was our copyright name. And look, I'm looking at setting up a facility up here in Toowoomba. We were thinking pheasants. We were thinking other game birds. What do you think? What can you tell me about it?" And so I just downloaded the story to Duncan Brown, who was the CEO of this company called Brisbane Valley Protein, and he bought the story essentially, and about why these were the largest commercial quail in the world, and you had a massive export opportunity if you wanted to utilise it. And so this is exactly what he did. It was a total game changer, in every way, shape and form.
None of Charlie's kids are keen to stay on the farm, but as he heads towards retirement, he's keen to hand Redgate over to someone. Maybe you're a quail farmer in the making.
Well, I don't want to leave the farm personally, and I'll go out in the box, I dare say. But I'm quite happy to lease the operation to somebody else that wants the business. It's very profitable. It's minimum labour input and good returns. But, I'm, 67, thereabouts this year, I think. Not that I'm counting. And, yeah, I'm I have an expiry date like everybody else. So, but they're not interested at all in the farming aspects of the business. And that's the way it is. A lot of farms end up that way, I think.
It's been a tough journey, but it's been fun along the way and worked out well in the end. Charlie reflects on his time at Redgate.
Well, property's in better shape than when we started here in many regards. The birds have been a really interesting journey. They've taken me, they've produced a very good business profile. We made a few major mistakes, particularly with getting involved in catering, etc. Well, I should have just stayed on the farm. That was certainly a regret. But as for the rest of it, no, life's been good. Life is good, and there've been plenty of ups and plenty of downs, and but mostly ups. We've got to deal with the best, the top end restaurants in the country. Tony Bilson and Matt Moran and Peter Gilmore. With fantastic restaurants up here in the valley. The old Georgian Dragon in East Maitland was a leading one for a long time. And there's Robbie Molyneux's out there at Colburn, and he's a two hat restaurant. Muse restaurant out here as well. We've got to deal with the top end of the food industry, and met some really interesting people. It was basically we created the trends in many cases with the poultry we could produce and made available to these restaurants. Didn't always work out well. Sometimes the product wasn't as good as it should have been, but it didn't stop us trying. And we've been here in interesting times. The restaurant scene's changed markedly. Game meat's taken a step down, now we deal now more with Asian clientele. Chinese customers are by far our biggest, and restaurants are actually taking very much a back foot on what we started with.
Trend maker, genetic tinkerer, hatcher of eggs and plans, Charlie Scott has seen a lot in his journey from cows to quail. By putting more meat on birds, he's put quail on more restaurant menus and in more home kitchens, first in New South Wales and now around the world. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.